The beginning of design is observation. And I think that the sentiment is true for a lot of other, if not every, creative discipline. I think music is a really key expression of this. If you want to make music, you need to learn how to listen. And that doesn't mean hear a song. It doesn't mean put on a bunch of songs and just hear them, although that's part of it. It means setting aside your biases and presumptions and really just hearing what's there and sort of basking in it. In order to really understand creative expression, we need to be able to do that. And so today we are going to set aside some of our assumptions and biases as we look at as we take the first step essentially and redesign this fantasy league website. I did a quick intro video on this a couple days ago, or maybe it was just yesterday. If you're interested in understanding, the thing that we're redesigning, go back and watch that. But what we're going to do today is, again, set aside our biases and presumptions, but we're also going to reserve solutioning for a different time. It's so easy to look at problems and instantly solve them. Like the human tendency is to look at problems and solve them instantly rather than just to sort of understanding what we see. And I would say even identifying things as problems is not a great first step. Really, we want to just focus on what is there, and that can involve how it makes us feel, things we're seeing, but we don't want to get too far down the solutioning route. So again, set aside biases, set aside presumptions, set aside assumptions, and let's not solution. So what we're looking at right now is the team management page, which is what we're going to be focusing on for the next few videos in this exercise. And I have a handy little comments tool. So we're just going to go through this design, and I'm going to make some observations and follow along and make your own. So first of all, let's just step back and look. And the first thing I just noticed is this my team typography really takes over the page in a way that doesn't feel unified with the rest of the page. And it might even be specifically the typography that it doesn't feel unified with. If we look at, the rest of the typography on the page, just the way that the sizing happens, it just doesn't feel consistent. I think we also have some color issues with this GW1 0 points. So I would just say like overall, consistency with typography. That's okay. We'll leave that miscomment there. This is a messy process, and that's okay. All right. Second thing. I just feel like these cards feel really clunky. We'll just say quite clunky. And we're not going to, identify how to solution that. I will say that if you get this screen wide enough that these cards go out to a wider view, but this is okay. We'll just look at this for now, for today. What else? So the top navigation, this might not be something that you notice, but something that my eye is drawn to right away, just from a lot of practicing, a lot of designing, is these spaces in between these tabs feels really odd, and the spacing between these buttons feels really odd as well. One thing that you'll learn as we do this series is that the difference between a design that looks good versus something that looks professional is going to be your margins and your margins, your spacing, those things that really make it tightly consistent with itself. So let's just say like this spacing feels a bit uncomfortable is the best word that I can use for it. Now, because I used this website and you guys didn't, there's something that I know that you don't, which is that these players are not the players on my team. So, I'm creating a team here, and we have 5 players up here, and these are 5 really well-known players, but they're not the ones that are on my team, and frankly, you can't even have all 5 of these guys on your team because they're too expensive. There's no way that you can make that happen. So okay, what else? I mean, I noticed this logo, and let's just say, like, I know this is an obvious statement to make, but it feels it feels um what's the right word for it? I mean, it feels scuffed, right? And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I think that's the intention of that logo, is to feel scuffed, but it does feel scuffed, and we're just observing right now, so we will write that down. What else? I mean, we have typography that's hard to read here. And in general, I think these images behind these things make the player a little bit hard to not make out, but I guess make out, right? Like it's really hard to see them as a cohesive element. You can ignore these C marks, by the way. This is where I had to stitch I had to take multiple screenshots and stitch them together, and I got kind of lazy and didn't do that specifically enough. So, what were we on? Oh, right. So these background, like, we have a guy's legs and back here, and we have the same guy's legs and back, and we can't even tell what this is. And I mean, this one's a logo. I think that one's pretty easy. What is this as well? It's just a texture, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it just all feels a bit chaotic. So we're just gonna say background feels chaotic and basically incomprehensible as to what it is. Sensible. There we go. Right on. One thing that I want to call out as well is that when you hover over this middle bar that says total points, it expands, and so you have these 3 sub items underneath it that feed into your points. So each player for a week makes a number of points, and that is based on the number of kill points, the number of map points, and the number of bonus points added together. And it's interesting that this is the only element that hovers, the other 2 do not. So the fact that it's visually the same is it's inconsistent, but it's also like doesn't set my expectations well. And then if we look at when you hover, I can't remember if this is hover or clicking. I think it happens when you hover on the card. It tells you the role that they are filling. So in the top left, you have the role assigned to the player. So there are players who they play a duelist role, they play the initiator role. But then we have our wild cards at the bottom who can play any role. And so in this instance, we have a wild card who is in the initiator role. So like I guess I don't know what to say about this except like the role they are filling only shows on hover. I mean, that's essentially what it is. We can also talk about the look and feel between these 2 boxes, like feel wildly inconsistent with each other. That's too general. We want to be a lot more specific with that. What it is that we have a gray background with white text and a white border here. And I guess we have a darker blue background with white text and white border and white dividers here. So the fact that we have such thin ones up here and it's more of a cohesive element makes this box on the right feel a lot less cohesive. We also don't have spacing here. We have spacing here. Lack consistency with each other. Border thickness, distance from card, size of text. What else? We're just going to say it feels a little chaotic. I'm sure we're going to use that word a lot, but that's okay. What else? I mean, the colors. This purple doesn't show up super well. This burnt red does. This lime green shows up way too well. The yellow shows up really well. So we'll say the colors, border colors. Degree of brightness / contrast. The purple particular is quiet, and the lime green in particular is loud. Speaking of color, if we look at this color at the top, this feels this burnt red and the green and the yellow. I don't know why, but my brain, if I just kind of step back, it just reminds me of ketchup, relish, and mustard. So like is hot dog condiments. So I think that's a little bit funny. If we come back to the tabs at the top, I also have this impression of tabs as just being like, it just feels old, not in like a good way. It feels like like when I was younger with the internet, a lot of ideas were brought over from physical media into the internet, and tabs is one of those because it was brought from like filing systems. The very oldest internet websites, by the way, don't have this, but somewhere along the way that became a trademark element of websites, and we've seen that disappear because the web has moved towards embracing its digital nature a lot more. And so let's just say, these tabs don't really embrace the digital nature of the product, and also they feel dated. Okay, what else do we want to see here? Low contrast, hard to read. What GW1 is. And I know what it is. It's game week 1, so it's whatever week in they're called splits is. But it's just not immediately obvious. It would be nice if there was a bit more clarity on that. Let's say some players don't have images, which is fine. Again, we're just observing what is. I also noticed that the players that do have images, there's a lot of harsh cutoffs of them, right? Like this player is missing the side of his arm, and he's missing the bottom, and it's not blended. It doesn't feel intentional. It's just kind of players cut off in weird ways. So and I think we said something about this, but the players don't stand out. they just don't stand out very much on the cards themselves. What else do we have here? If you don't know what these icons mean, might not know how to allot players by role. I think the outlines makes it feel like something that you can drag and drop into. Now, because I've used this, that's not how it works. Actually, you have to do this. I don't know if it's a click or right click, and then you would say sub. So if they're a player who's in the starting roster, then you would put bench in order to bench them. And if they're a player on the bench, which down here, then you would have to hover over and click sub to put them in. There is no dragging and dropping here, so that experience just feels clunky. We'll just say it just feels clunky as a way to manage a roster. What else? I mean, what about these icons here? How do we feel about them? I mean, like when I look at these icons, I'm reminded of like a newspaper or something like that. And I think it comes down to the black and white nature, but the amount of detail in this one in particular. I mean, it's not just the fact that if I was to say money, it's a bank. It's I think the line work really makes me think of a newspaper, but then also we have a lot of inconsistency where this is really line detailed and then these stars are not. And then this third one doesn't feel like it's aligned with either. And you also see that the line work here is not the same width as this line work. So let's all say so it's really just that first icon that makes me feel like it's a newspaper. And then this one's solid compared to the lines in the first one. The edges are also kind of blunted. So you see we have really sharp edges on this icon, whereas these are kind of blunted. The edges are also blunted when compared. And we'll just say this third one. And even the way it's blunted, right? These are kind of blunted, whereas this has its ends rounded. So these two could maybe be a part of the same design system, but they don't feel like it to me. All right, a couple more things to note is I just feel like the spacing around the card in particular, it just feels clunky to me. And then we have this spacing is higher than this spacing is wide. So I would just say and we call this in the realm of web and web app design, we would call this padding. So padding is an element within an item that spaces the content from the edges within an item. And now the distance between these cards, we might call this spacing, we might call it a grid, we might call it the margins. The margins in particular are similar to spacing, except it's a space on the outside of the card. But we're just going to say spacing. I would also say, though, it does feel consistent between the distance between the padding and this margin feels the same, though. It's nice to see some intentionality being brought there. I think, I mean, we could just say here's the socials. I don't know if there's a reason to bring them up in the top nav. We don't want to be presumptive. We don't want to problem solve, but there they are. Oh, one more thing is I don't know how I feel about having 6, 7 items in the header. The rule of thumb used to be that you want to have 5 to 8 like navigation areas in the header. I think that rule has really, I don't know. I think it's been, first of all, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule anymore. Secondly, I think that it's kind of lost its like it's not necessarily the right rule anymore. So anyway, I had to pause there for a second. So I think that let's just say 7 might be a bit too many items for one menu. That doesn't mean that all these pages shouldn't exist. It just means that it might feel like we have a little bit too many items in one menu. And for the social media, we'll say like they don't feel important at the bottom of the page. And I think that's it. All right. I don't have any more observations on this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, okay, I do have one more. So the styling, color selection, of burnt red and dark blue. I mean, it's just Valorant has a number of different color schemes, but this color scheme does feel super Valorant. The exact like shade and contrast that they've got going here between this burnt red and this deep blue, like this kind of dark navy, something like that. Okay, I did want to capture that one. I think that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one.